ball, RJ.
You're listening to Big 12 This Morning on Sirius XM Big 12 Radio, Channel 375.
This is Big 12 This Morning on Sirius XM, Channel 375. I'm Ari Temko, along with Dave Archer, former Iowa State quarterback, former Atlanta Falcons quarterback. Talk now with R.J. Young, host of the R.J. Young Show on the Sports Animal in Tulsa, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. After this show ends, you can flip over to the Young. What's up, R.J.? Good morning,
What's
buddy.
up, brother? I'm doing okay. You doing all right?
Yeah, not bad. Wanted to get your thoughts on Bob Bowlesby's comments recently. He was really outspoken in the transfer portal, saying that he thinks, based on this year of the transfer portal, that all student athletes who wish to transfer should be required to sit out. You know, had comments about the foundational mistake in terms of there being different transfer rules for different sports. Whereas in men's basketball and women's basketball and football and baseball and ice hockey, you have to sit out the year, but in every other sport you can play right away. What are your thoughts on sort of the first year of the transfer portal and the transfer waiver and the openness of transferring now in modern college football and college sports?
Well, I think the portal and the waiver are two very different arguments that happen to go under the same umbrella, which is the NCAA, which I got a bone to pick with in the first place. But I also think that Bowlesby pointed out the programs that are most likely to produce money in an athletic program for which he thinks that this student should have to sit out. I don't think that should be a thing. I've never thought that should be a thing. I never understood why you should have to sit out a year because you chose to get out of a situation you no longer thought was in your best interest, in the same way that many coaches do. And vice versa, many athletic directors fired their coaches to get out of a bad situation when we're talking about a football program. So pot kettle seems to be the argument, but I also get that Bowlesby's job is to defend the programs and the universities, and that this real intense argument we're having does not want to go around labor, right? And the value of really skilled labor that you're still trying to call unskilled labor, and you don't want to compensate. I think he's trying to put the genie back in the bottle, and then how this works.
Interesting. R.J. Young with us here on Big 12 This Morning. R.J., when you look at Oklahoma, and what's the biggest question in your mind? I think we've talked about this throughout the offseason now. Quarterback, the defense with Grinch, the offensive line. Where does your eyes immediately go? What's the number one question?
The defense. I want to know what the defense is going to do, particularly on the back end and in the trenches, because that is where you see a glaring weakness for Oklahoma, especially when you're getting into these games that matter more to Oklahoma fans and to college football at large, semifinal, national semifinal, college football playoff, because that's when you get exposed. We know that Oklahoma has the offense to stay in a game and win a game big. We don't know that the defense can hold up its end. And there was an argument to be made that if the defense was even middling, meaning just blatantly median, average, you would have won the last two national titles. So that's where my eyes go. I want to see what Alex Grinch is able to do with the best set of players he's ever had at his disposal as the primary play caller.
What do you anticipate this defense being? In terms of what they've been and the personnel that they have, what's the best fit for this defense?
I think the best fit is the 3-4, 4-2-5 hybrid that he wants to run. It's switching from a two-gap scheme to a one-gap scheme, which is a big deal because I think most high school football players that play on the line of scrimmage come up playing in that kind of scheme because it's a little bit simpler to understand, and it makes your job really easy when you're talking about, hey, get into the backfield, get to a running back, get to a quarterback, and then can you man up on the outside? So you're going to see what looks like a 3-4 look, switch to a 4-2-5 look, switch to a 3-3-5 with the same sort of personnel, which means that your nickel, your slot corner in the NFL, your third safety is going to have to be really, really good. And I want to see just how much better those guys playing that position are going to be, because you're basically saying we're going to do away with the idea of a Sam linebacker altogether, which I think you should have done 5 years ago. But that's also a big part of the reason why you need to make the switch at Oklahoma.
RJ, when you look at Oklahoma from a personnel standpoint, you just talked about how important it is for the defense to take a next step. Is it a defensive player? Let's take Jalen Hurts out of the mix. Should he become the quarterback? It looks like that will be the case at Oklahoma. Who's the next most important player on the team that has to take it to another level for OU to be as potent as they were offensively or maybe better defensively?
Tre Brown, cornerback, Oklahoma. He is the rising star at corner. He's the rising star on the defense. If that guy can follow around the best wide receiver for the team that they're playing against, you fundamentally change the way that the defense looks and operates because you isolated the number one target, the number one option for a quarterback, and we know if you can just make him hold that ball a little bit longer, you give linebackers and defensive linemen an opportunity to get to the quarterback. I'm not so much interested in what the offensive line is going to do, although I know you're going to have 4 new starters alongside Creed Humphrey, who is pretty natural at his position of center. But I think if you can get really outstanding cornerback play out of that guy, you're going to be able to roll coverages to the other side, and you're going to be able to pin your ears back and do some of those more exotic blitzes that we saw Grinch do at Washington State.
Any chance Spencer Rattler could beat out Jalen Hurts?
Is there a chance that I could still grow to be 6'5"? Yeah, sure. There's a chance. That's possible.
Think so, RJ.
Oh, well, okay, there you go. Right there. There's your answer. No, I don't think so. Spencer is the most talented quarterback I've ever seen at the high school level, up close, personal. I think he has all the tools. He's putting together highlight videos of him throwing over mountains and into trash cans. He's doing the Pat Mahomes stuff where he's running to one side and no look passing 35 yards on a dime. He's really got all the tools. But I also think that you didn't bring Jalen Hurts in here to sit. Y'all brought him in here to try to give Spencer Rattler a year to get his legs underneath him in a place he's never played before, at a division that he's never played before, in an offense that is going to move faster than anything he's had to control. So, like I said, is there a chance? And you said, I don't think it's very likely. That's where I'm at with it. I can't wait to watch him play. It just ain't going to be more than 4 games this year.
RJ Young, our guest here on Big 12 this morning, talking about OU and OU football. Okay, to that end, RJ, how much different, and we all know Lincoln Riley's ability to morph both in the game and make adjustments and week to week make adjustments offensively to attack defenses. How much different does this offense look this year with Jalen Hurts playing quarterback than it did last year with Murray or with Baker Mayfield here?
Dave, that's one of the most interesting questions that I've put to myself to answer as well. I think it's going to look like Baker Mayfield's 2015 season. I think you're going to be a lot more run dominant in what you are thinking going into a game than maybe you have in years past. I said Kyler Murray won the Heisman because Rodney Anderson got hurt. You don't draw it up for your quarterback to throw for 4,000 and rush 4,000. That's just not what you do. But when you are really, really good with this offense, you have 2 backs that are 1,000-yard backs that can basically play for anybody in college football. You got that right now. You have a quarterback that can make plays with his feet. He can run to throw. You have that right now. And you have big body wide receivers and a tight end that you love that basically forces the center of the field, your weak side linebacker, your nickel safety, to cover up a big tight end and say, hey, look, you're going to give us this matchup or you're not. And you basically make it into that sort of a football game because you can also bring that tight end in and say, we're just going to beat you to death and run the ball. I guess the other way we look at this would be Auburn's Cam Newton 2010 season when they won the national championship. I think that's what it's going to look like. I think it's going to be much more power-oriented than it has in years past. And it's still going to put up a bunch of points. It's just going to do it just a little bit differently.
We're talking with RJ Young, the RJ Young Show, Sports Animal Tulsa, right here on Big 12 this morning, Sirius XM, channel 375. RJ, Oklahoma and Texas, pretty certain they'll be towards the top of the conference. So how do you think the rest of it shakes out in terms of 3, 4, 5?
I think Iowa State is there, man. I think Iowa State's not sneaking up on anybody anymore. Brock Purdy won that job, sent Zeb Nolan back into another division. It's North Dakota State, but you get my point there. I also think that TCU is always going to be hard because the defense is always going to be great. Matt Rule at Baylor, that's the question for me. Can they still beat Texas Tech in Matt Wells' first year? Is that because we know that that's becoming a rivalry within this conference? But I think that Iowa State is just going to be there. And I think in November, we're going to be talking about them, not unlike we were talking about them last year. And if they get a win against Texas, they get a win against Oklahoma, all of a sudden, we're talking. I mean, they're in the driver's seat for the Big 12 championship game. And I think, this is Matt Campbell's magic year if he's going to have one.
RJ, when you looked at Oklahoma's schedule, and I'm going to let you think about this for a second as I kind of ask this question. Where do your eyes, other than the Texas game, of course, October 12, noon, Texas, Oklahoma. Other than that game, where did your eyes immediately go and you kind of say, well, okay, wow, you mentioned Iowa State and Baylor. They're back-to-back in early November. Is there a game on the schedule you kind of looked at and said, okay, that's one, obviously going to be locked and loaded for all of them, but that was one that kind of raised the eyebrow for you?
Iowa State, man. The last time that Oklahoma got beat at home, I believe 2017, is Iowa State came in here and ran that 3-4 that is taking away your air raid concepts, is making you hold the ball longer than you want to, is forcing you to make mistakes. And then they were able to hold the ball and basically neutralize the offense by running out the clock or doing what you would need to do by just saying, hey, we're going to line up with our quarterback and we're going to just pound on you and watch that clock tick, tick, tick. I think Matt Campbell knows what he's doing. I think strategically he's going to be able to counter Alex Grinch. They went to school together at Mountain Union. They came up together. If anybody's already in that guy's head, it's him. And I do believe that because of Iowa State's history with Oklahoma, it's just always going to be an underrated game for OU fans. And by virtue, players at Oklahoma, you're up for Texas. You're up for Oklahoma State. You're not necessarily going to be up for an Iowa State that traditionally you should beat senseless. I think that game is going to have a lot to do with not just, their two fortunes, but the fortunes of the conference when we're talking about will the Big 12 have another team in the college football playoff.
Who's somebody we don't know that you think will have a big impact on Oklahoma football this year, offense or defense?
Trejan Bridges, 5-star wide receiver, true freshman. He's probably the least talked about of the 3 5-stars that Lincoln Riley brought in. Because of his size. The other two guys, Theo Weiss and Jaden Hazelwood, are 6'3", 6'4". Theo Weiss is much more he's the polished product. Like right now, today, that's the best bet to be the pro. But Bridges just has he has a knack for getting open in a way that I haven't seen for a guy his size. He can move inside, he can move outside, which means that he has more opportunities to get on the field because both of those guys that he came in with are flankers. They're split ends. They're not flankers. They're split ends. They're on the line of scrimmage guys. This guy can move around, and they will move him around because his hands are that good, and he is that fast, and he's probably the better route runner across the middle when we're talking intermediate routes, getting open for slants, running a real dig. I mean, Dave, you'll understand this. That dude made 3 cuts when he ran his dig route. I don't see that at a high school level. They call it a dig route and be like, okay, you just ran a deep end. Don't call it a dig route. He knows what that looks like, and he knows why it's supposed to work. His football intellect is better than I've seen for a wide receiver at his level.
RJ Young, make sure to check out the RJ Young Show, Sports Animal in Tulsa. Always appreciate your time, man. Keep doing big things. Appreciate you.
I appreciate you, Ari. You had my back for a very long time, brother.
Great stuff, RJ. Thank you, man.
RJ Young joining us, Big 12 this morning.